So our next speaker, Andrew, is one of those people who does things that most of us just dream about. And today he's here to tell us about this insane adventure that he went on where, in spite of everybody telling him what he couldn't do, he just continued to do it. And he took himself on this journey, and the journey wasn't just about, hey, I'm going to do this thing that nobody else can do, but rather, what is the experience that I can have by exposing myself to others' ideas and others' perspectives and what their voices have to say when I really, really listen. And obviously, there's a major, major connection back to UX and to building products with this idea of listening. Andrew is going to show us the extreme listening version and relate that back to what we do. So would everybody welcome Andrew Forsthoefel.
Hey, thanks for being here. Yeah, I feel obliged to say thank you for showing up to listen. Listening is what I will be talking about mostly while I'm here. And I say thank you because one thing I learned on this 4,000-mile walk across America where I was proposing to listen to people was that my ability to listen to people sincerely and openly and then my willingness to do so was a profound offering. And that's not something I'd never really thought of listening in that way before, you know. And as I was on this journey and people were receiving me into their homes and telling me their stories and taking me in, and I felt like I was often being given so much and didn't have much to give. But what I eventually realized over the course of this transcontinental slog, this like foot journey, was that simple willingness to really be with somebody was just a gift. So thank you for giving me that gift today. I hope I can get into some of the walking part of my experience. But I really want to sort of hone in on the listening part of it. I was thinking about technology on my drive out here today, and what is that? What even is technology, you know? And just the simple idea came of technology is an instrument or a tool or a craft or a practice that makes something possible that would not be possible without it, right? So I'm imagining the monkey with the stick and the ant hill. It's like, without the stick, he couldn't get the ant. So listening, if that's what technology is, then listening is a technology. It makes something else possible between us. When I know what listening is, and when I'm then willing to do that with you and for you. But when I began this journey, I wasn't thinking about any of this. I had just graduated from college and was left with this vacuum of purpose. It's like, whoa, I just did everything I was supposed to do, and I still have no idea where I'm supposed to go or who I am, you know. And instead of sort of aborting that uncertainty and terminating the conversation of my question, I wanted to actually dive full into it head first. And it was a question, I sort of focused the question around coming of age. What actually is that? You know, I had supposedly come of age. I had achieved my culture's best approximation of initiation and still felt so many ambiguities about what that actually was. And so I decided, all right, instead of starting a career that I might even love, I want to face and encounter this question. And I want to do it with us. So what I decided to do was I was going to walk out my mom's back door and try to see everybody I encountered as my teacher which is one way of articulating the kind of listening I'm talking about. When I say listening, I'm not talking about the kind of listening we tend to do where I'm listening to what you're saying so as to respond with a quick witty remark, or to counter your argument with a point that sort of disproves you. That's one kind of listening, and there's a place for that. I also don't mean obedience. I think when we were kids, many of us picked up this idea that listen means obey. Listen to me. That's also not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about seeing one another as if we have something worthy to offer each other. Really encountering each other in that way, as if you were my teacher, as if you had lived something or endured something or survived something that has something to teach me that I don't know and that I can't know unless I ask you and then hush and then listen, really attend to you. This was not a perspective I really learned in school. It's not something that's being taught, and it has to be. Because again, there is something that becomes possible with this technology that cannot happen otherwise. When I walked in here, I saw this beautiful painting here, and I was like, whoa, this is kind of the world where listening is absent. It's kind of like I'm alone, and I'm just like, I'm not allowed to ask questions, and I'm just in my own self. And it's like, this is the world that's possible with listening. Everyone's just like, And I don't think it's actually always, I don't think connection always looks joyful. Sometimes, in my experience, some of the deepest connection I've experienced with people has been through grief, has been through a willingness to be with them in their anger. So a part of the apprenticeship to listening involves learning how to be with the uncomfortable, messy, human experience, And it doesn't always look like, although it can. Sometimes it feels like that. So this is the kind of listening I'm talking about. And again, when I set out, I was asking myself, okay, if I was going to wear a sign on this journey, to kind of communicate to people who passed me by on the highway what I was doing, what would I say? Just a pithy little... And this phrase of walking to listen came to mind. It's like, I don't really know quite what I'm looking for, but I know that I'm listening, and so that was the most honest communication of what it was I was trying to do. But I didn't really know what listening was. What I'm articulating now wasn't something I really realized. It was something I had to learn by practice on this journey, and I'm still learning about what it is. So day 1, mile 1, you're looking at it. That is me leaving home. And I packed up my backpack full of stuff. I went to Staples and laminated my little walking to listen sign. I don't know what I'm just like, oh my God, I'm about to be walking across America, feeling excited, scared, Walked out to the back of Mom's backyard where those train tracks run. Just a slow train trundles by once every, couple hours. And I wanted to start there instead of the roads. I was planning on walking the highways because I wanted to meet as diverse a cross-section of people as possible. Not on the long-distance trails. I wanted to listen to as many different kinds of us as possible. And the road felt too intimidating for day 1. So I just wanted to walk on this sort of serene track. And I take my backpack out there, and Mom is taking all these pictures of me. It's like, okay, let me get another one. It's like, And I'm starting to feel like, oh, come on, Mom, And then my brother, who's a teenager at the time, shouted out from the patio, hurry up and just get on your journey. God, I got to get back to sleep, man. It's Saturday. So just epic romantic departure moment. Just So I started walking, and Mom goes, lift up your arms. Just wanting to embolden me, not wanting me to leave afraid, because fear tends to beget fear. So she's like, no, you got to. She goes, lift up your arms. So I do. And the thing I love about this picture is, can you still hear me? Cool. It looks like this sort of machismo, like triumphant, like, whoa. Kind of like that music, like. And in fact, I'm sobbing in that moment. It's like, as soon as I lifted up the arms, it was like, oh God! Oh! I might not make it. Truly, I might die out there. That's what I was feeling. But I was also feeling the relief of I'm listening to this question inside me. I am obeying what I hear in here. This impulse to I gotta go and find out. I gotta go and listen. So about a mile after that moment, this car pulls up on the side of the road near the tracks. And this guy gets out and starts walking toward me. And I'm thinking, like, first encounter, like maybe this is the guy, maybe this is my teacher, maybe he'll have the answer. And I won't have to walk all the way, just go back home, He comes out of the woods, and I'm surprised to see that it's Bob, my mom's landlord. And I'm thinking, Bob, is it you? Like, are you all this time you were? Because I was. All of a sudden, I'd put on this perspective where I was paying attention at last to everything that was coming into contact with my experience. Listening, not dismissing. When you're listening, there's no such thing as disposability. Nobody is disposable. Each one of us has something unique. So here's Bob, all right? I go, Bob, what a coincidence. Bob used to be on the police force in Philadelphia. He goes, it's not a coincidence. Your mom is a wreck back at the house. He goes, you don't have to do this. And I'm like, Bob, like, that's not the pep talk I need right now, man. Like, I was just crying back there, man. And he goes, this can be 6 months or it can be 6 hours. And I go, okay. And he goes, you got a knife? When he saw that I was going to keep walking, he goes, you got a knife? I say, yeah. He goes, well, here's another one. He gives me a huge knife. And he goes, don't trust anybody. I'm like, Bob, that's kind of the whole point, man. Like, I'm walking to listen. Like, how can I expect someone to entrust me with their truth, who they are, how they got to be who they are? And if it's truth we're talking about, it's going to involve some of that tender-heartedness, broken-heartedness. That's what I want to know. I want to know about the real stuff. And how can I expect anybody to entrust that to me if I'm not willing to trust them? And trust is interesting, because it's like, who's going to do it first? Who's going to take the first step, It's like, until then, it's like mutually assured destruction or something, a Cold War of like, it's like someone's got to do it. And how to do that skillfully in such a way that is taking care of myself. This is what I was learning. It's like, how do I live into the world that listening makes possible, which involves trust and vulnerability? And how do I do that when I'm living in this world where most of us aren't listening? And where we do horrible things to one another? How does that transformation happen? And I've come to believe that listening is the technology of transformation. And we were born with that technology. That's in our organism. That's here, So, the whole year, I was walking for a year. I was dancing this dance of trust. And how do we do that, So he gives me the knife. Don't trust anybody. I'm like, all right, man. And I go, well, I'll be thinking about you out there, Bob. And he goes, don't think of me. Think of your mother. I'm like, all right, man, dang. Oh, God. About 6 miles later, I'm on the outskirts of the town near where we used to live. And it's this industrial district this way and a forest that way, and nobody around to hear me scream if I need help when I see 4 men up ahead on the tracks. And at this point, I'm far away enough from home to start to feel some fear come in. And this is the beautiful thing about walking, is that all of the middlemen or middlewomen, it's just bare and naked, and you're right there, flesh and flesh. And again, like what becomes possible in that place that cannot happen any other way? Deep human communion, or disaster, I think is what we're more familiar with. So I'm approaching these men and like getting a little closer, and I'm just getting data. It's like, all right, they look like they might be homeless based on what the clothes they're wearing. Getting a little closer, yeah, they're men. A little closer, they're all Latino men, okay? And throughout the entire year, in some ways, this journey for me was a master class in watching my own mind's proclivity for fear. My own mind's inability to be with uncertainty and the unknown. And the reason why that's a problem is because if I don't know how to comfortably, relaxedly be in the unknown, then I'm going to make assumptions about you in order to fill that space. And if I'm making assumptions about you and proceeding as if those were true, I'm not actually relating to you. I'm relating to my own nightmare about who you might be. And again, the only way to find out who you actually are is to ask you and to then listen. In some ways, it seems so obvious. But I invite you to look at how present that kind of listening is in your life. I mean, one thing I've found as I've become sensitive to what this practice is how rare it is. How rare. When was the last time you got asked the question, hey, like I know I've known you for a while, but like, who are you? How'd you get to be that way? It's very unusual, Almost threatening, because it's so like unusual. But what if you were approached in that way by a trustworthy listener? And this is the kind of listening I'm talking about. This is the name I've come up with for it. Trustworthy listening. So this journey, a masterclass in my own mind's inability to be with the unknown. And we have to learn how to be with the unknown so we can find out what's real, what's the truth. So my mind is making all kinds of assumptions. Oh God, these men, what are they going to do? Maybe they don't like white boys like me, so on and so forth. Come a little closer, and they look at me kind of like, which was probably within their right. I mean, I looked ridiculous. I looked like I should have been in the Yukon or something. I had a huge backpack, you see. I had an American flag and an Earth flag on the other side, and a walking to listen sign, and I was wearing a cowboy hat. Just figured that's what you do, So they looked at me, and I looked at them, and they were like, what are you doing, And I said, well, I'm Andrew, I'm walking to listen. I'm listening to people's stories. I'm walking all the way across America, which to me sounded ridiculous because I had been walking for maybe 3 hours at that point, But they didn't know that, so I played that card, walking across America, And they sort of look at each other and start speaking in Spanish, and the one guy says something to the other guy, and he starts reaching into a big plastic bin. And I'm like, maybe it's time to go, Where's Bob's knife? Reaches in and pulls out a package of cookies, unopened, and a sleeve of apple juice boxes. Gives them. Invites me to sit down with them. I take out my mandolin, which is in that yellow bag, start playing a song for them. Martine takes out a flask of Nikolai vodka, passes it around. I'm like, where am I? Like, what? 7 miles from home, like, where am I? the language I have for this now is I was in the world that becomes possible with listening. We were getting there, co-creating that world together using this technology. We were approaching this place, you know? Yeah. And suddenly the sky opened up and it started to downpour. And this is another thing about walking, is like, whatever happens, you're going to experience it. You know, there's no hiding from your own thoughts and emotions. I had so much time alone out on the road, there's nowhere to go. I actually decided not to take a smartphone because I knew that if I did, I would end up just following the blue dot, you know, all the way across the country. It's like, oh, hey, I'm walking to listen. So I had a flip phone. Thank God for that. My mom was like, yeah, you're going to take your phone, buddy. I had a little netbook laptop, so I could plug into the internet and post on my travel blog and stuff. But I was trying to actually strip it down and explore, investigate, and learn the more basic, naked technologies available to all of us as human beings that we actually don't have to pay for, that we can only learn by practice. You know? So yeah, it started pouring. 3 of them ran off into the field, into the woods. And before Martine did, he goes, we'll take you back to our home. We'll take you out of the rain, take you in, get you good, you know. And I'm feeling Bob's knife in my pocket, you know. Don't trust anybody, man. And that's not just Bob. That's a conditioning that we all receive. And again, is it entirely out of line? I mean, no, it's understandable where that's coming from, right? But am I going to let the fear that something might happen to me, that I might get hurt if I trust? Am I going to let that fear stop me from creating the world that I want to be living in, which is a world of trust and listening and love? And one thing I've come to believe is that, yes, there may be consequences, or call them learnings, that come from trusting and not having that trust reciprocated. Yeah, there may be some hurt that comes from that, and I may learn something from that. But there are certain consequences to not trusting. There are, and it's this. It's that world. And that's what most, I mean, I speak for myself. It's like, this is the world that we're healing, you know, learning how to connect with one another, how to open up, how to trust, how to listen. So, yeah, got the knife in the pocket, Martine inviting me in, and it's just raining, you know, and I'm feeling how miserable it is to be wet and not know where you're going to sleep that night. And so I ended up following him. I said, okay, he takes me through, and we end up in the woods in this little clearing right behind a strip mall that I had been to many times before. And here was their camp. Wood pallets for walls, bicycles kind of propped up, bungee cords. Had never known that this was here. Had never known that there was this whole other world right behind Capriati's. You'd go to for turkey Reubens, you know what I mean? And it was only upon finding in myself a willingness to leave my comfort zone, to admit that I don't know everything. It's so obvious, you know. But again, that's another one of the conditionings that we receive in this culture, is that you're supposed to know what you're doing and where you're going to go. You're supposed to know the answer. You're supposed to know who you are, of course. It's like finally relieving myself of that burden. It's like, okay, actually I don't know the whole story. Obviously. Can I listen and find out a little bit more about reality? You have access to a little corner of the universe that nobody else does. And my understanding of the universe is not complete until I've heard about what you've seen. And in this moment for me, it looked like, oh my gosh, there's this camp behind Capriati's that I never knew about. And then the human communion that comes from this. So we went in. Martine took off his wet clothes, offered me some dry clothes, When I said I didn't need them, he put on the clothes himself. And I'm thinking, what would you do? What would you have done if I said, I'll take those clothes? You know? He was giving me the clothes that weren't even on his back yet. So again, we're in the flow of generosity and love and respect. And we just kind of waited out the rain. You know, there may or may not have been some more Nikolai vodka involved, another mandolin song. And when the rain finished up and we went outside and I was ready to go, I didn't want to go. I felt something like love for this man. And this after less than 2 hours of being together. And I was perplexed. I was like, how did this... The fact that I don't really want to leave right now tells me that we have achieved something together. Tells me that there's something like love here. Maybe it's even love. Maybe that's exactly what this is. Baffled that such an experience could happen after just 2 hours with somebody. And again, this is a part of what's possible with this willingness to listen. And that's not the only thing that's possible. Truth and reconciliation is another part of what becomes possible with listening. And it can't happen without it. So I said goodbye, and Martine said, God bless you and be careful out there. He said, always sleep with a knife by your side. Swear to you. Or a pistol, he said. I said, okay, whoa. So my time is already up. I was hoping to get in another story or two. But I guess I'll just close by saying that was day 1. Hour 4, of what became a year-long listening walk. And the listening walk continues, This is where my walk has taken me today. The apprenticeship to listening is one without a single moment's rest. And the imperative to listen deeply to one another, as if we have something worthy and unique to share. It sounds, even as I'm saying it, it sounds almost trite. But yeah, my prayer, my plea is that each of us take this practice seriously, whether it's in user experience work and every sphere, personal and professional, of your life. So, yeah, thank you for listening to me today, and thank you for joining me. I'm just going to trust that you'll join me in this work of becoming a trustworthy listener for us. Thank you.